Hello again. Today is Sunday, December 25th, 2022. It's a Christmas day. This is a second reading on my part because I am enjoying reading English articles because I want to practice English. I work for Korea Telecom. I am a KT employee. I don't represent KT, but I'm just trying to read English article to practice, to hone in on my English. I would like to keep my English skills, but since I don't live in the English speaking environment, even though I have a good American friend, John Jackson, Brian Dean, Luke Viano, and Chris Conrad. It's just that I live in Korea where Korean is spoken all the time. So that's why the only recourse I can have is through reading English articles that are available on the internet, over the internet. So before the internet came into being, I read a lot of American business books, novels, Sidney Sheldon's, Jackie Collins, and also a lot of magazines, including Popular Science, which was my favorite, and sometimes the Penthouse, the Playboy, and Hustler magazines. They are sleazy, but it helps with my English capability, competency, and also I read the engineering books, software engineering, mechanical engineering, and also electrical and electronics engineering too. And what else? Yes, manuals, U.S. military manuals when I was a soldier or working with the U.S. Army as a Katusa soldier. And also engineer manuals that you encounter since you are a KT engineer. Okay, so I know what the switches, routers, and Ethernets are all about, but our LT switches, and hubs, dummy hubs. But I would like to clarify the subtle differences and memorize. Okay. One last time, I am trying to read this article, which was never read by me before. And the reason is that I would like to practice my pronunciation by reading it. And also I am trying to memorize good words, expressions, and even sentences that I deem memorizable, affordable, or they could come in handy when I have conversations with foreigners. So, for example, I would like to teach. When I teach, I could use those good expressions in my class. Research hub, switch versus router versus hub, how to choose. This one is from CDW, that's good company, August 11th, 2022. So they use Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, email, print, and share functions, share functionalities. Case study, 4-minute read. I guess this would be like 12-minute read for me. Switch versus router versus a hub. How to choose? What is a switch? How does it work? What is the difference between an Ethernet switch and network switch, hub, and router? Find out how to decide which is best for your needs. What's inside? What is an Ethernet switch? The difference between a switch and a hub versus hub. The difference between a network switch versus router. I think "and" should be more appropriate. The difference between an Ethernet switch and a router. You will hear network technicians toss around the terms Ethernet switch, network switch, hub, and router almost interchangeably. However, each of these devices performs a specific function on the network. If you've ever wondered how does an Ethernet switch work, this guide will give you an overview of how these devices perform on a network so you can determine the best fit for your home or business needs. What is an Ethernet switch? First, let's talk about the function an Ethernet switch performs on your network. This type of switch is also referred to as a network switch. It works as a central place for computers, printers, and every other wired network device on the network to communicate with each other. The Ethernet switch can also be wired to the router via a cable that plugs into an Ethernet port, which allows you to access the internet through the modem. While some routers are manufactured as a network switch and router combo, a router on its own performs a separate function from the switch, even though sometimes they are found in a single device. For a modular setup, the switch, hub, and router will all be separate devices on the local network. For a modular setup, that's another good term. For a modular setup, for a modular setup, for a modular setup, for a modular setup. The difference between a switch and hub. Hub works similarly to an Ethernet switch in that the devices on the office or home network will be wired to it. A switch will keep track of the plugged-in devices accessing the network by their media access control addresses, MAC addresses, media access control addresses, MAC addresses, and will send received frames, packets of data transmitted as a single unit to the designated port without causing lag on the network. A hub will share its bandwidth equally among all ports. It's not a big deal when only a single PC or a few devices are broadcasting on the network. However, when multiple devices are active on the network on a 10 or 100 megabps hub, this can degrade performance. Right? StarTech.com Industrial 5-port Gigabit Ethernet Switch 4RJ45 SFP slots 30 watt. Trip, a late industrial Gigabit Ethernet switch, 16-port light managed DIN mount. Lynx dual band mesh Wi-Fi 6 router. The difference between a network switch versus router. A router works by connecting a network to another network via a modem. The most common connections involve LANs, local area networks, or WANs, wide area networks. The router will normally be found at the gateway to the network and perform the function of routing or passing on data packets along the network. Function of routing or passing on data packets along the router. Since the data packets contain the destination IP addresses of where they are headed, this enables routers and modems to communicate with each other using ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol, to determine the most efficient path for transmitting data packets over the network to their destination point, Internet Control Message Protocol, ICMP. Which routers and modems? A switch will allow users on a network to share files or have printer sharing devices among wired and wireless devices signed into the network. While switches don't have inherent network protection built in, a router will often have hardware-based firewall protection that is individually configurable to your individual office or home network to give premium optimum connectivity. Let me read this one more time. While switches don't have inherent network protection built in, a router will often have hardware-based firewall protection that is individually configurable to your individual office or home network to give optimum connectivity. The difference between an Ethernet switch versus router. While a network switch can connect multiple devices and networks to expand the LAN, a router will allow you to share a single IP address among multiple network devices. In simple terms, the Ethernet switch creates networks, and the router allows for connections between networks. The Ethernet switch creates networks, and the router allows for connections between networks. The majority of routers have a single LAN port and single WAN port, while a switch will have multiple ports for different devices to communicate with the LAN, such as PCs or printers. The router will allow PCs and other connected devices to access the internet and other networks. A wireless router can also transmit a Wi-Fi signal that wireless devices may connect to. This is especially convenient for allowing laptops and mobile devices onto the Wi-Fi network for internet access, or giving accessibility to a printer with Wi-Fi capabilities that anyone can log into the network may utilize. An Ethernet switch is limited to the devices that may be wired into it via an Ethernet cable plugged into the device Ethernet port. As you can see, you can integrate different combinations of hubs, routers, and switches on your wired or wireless network. If you have only a few devices on your LAN, a hub may be a good choice for a central connection to your devices. If you have the need for more connections, an Ethernet switch may be a better option over a hub. The reason is that there is less lag when you use the switch with multiple devices on a hub, since received frames will only be directed to devices active on the network. Now that you know how an Ethernet switch works along with the functions of a hub and router, you can use this information to drill down to the perfect setup for your home or office network for the fastest internet connections and Wi-Fi speeds. Drill down to You can use this information to drill down to the perfect setup for your home or office network for the fastest internet connections and Wi-Fi speeds. So that's a typo. Double okay? You gotta be single the. Drill down, hub, router, switch, network, affordable access. What else? Same networks, creates networks, communicates between the two different networks. Single port, single WAN port, single LAN port, right? And what else? What else I remembered? Drill down, what else? Not much, but I learned the difference between Ethernet switch, router, and hub. Okay, passing on data and so on. Well, this is quite a brief article. I have to say goodbye because I'm getting tired now. I practiced my presentation very well. I really appreciate CDW for their effort to teach me the subtle difference between switch, router, and hub. This is good article. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye bye. Good night.